Hello, welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join Boundless Journeys today to learn about our small group hiking adventure in the Scottish Highlands. I'm Michelle, the tour manager of our Scotland trip, and I'm very fortunate as I had the opportunity to join our Scotland trip last season. I'm excited to share this incredible country and culture with you and hope it inspires you to join us this summer. Before we get started, you'll notice a chat feature on the left side of the screen. If you'd like to submit questions there, I'll respond to you each individually shortly after the webinar ends instead of during the presentation. Or if you prefer, you can email me directly at michelle@boundlessjourneys.com. I love managing this tour, having had the opportunity to hike all the trails, taste the delicious food, meet the locals, and experience firsthand the incredible diversity in such a relatively small region of the northern half of Scotland. The remoteness and beauty of the Orkney Islands in the north felt light years away from the more impressive mountains of the Highlands to the west. I'm now pleased to introduce our guide, Mark Cox, who has a love for all things outdoors in Scotland and continuously embraces its wealth of opportunity. While he's guided trips all over the world, Scotland has been Mark's home for the last 25 years. He currently resides in the heart of the Cairngorms National Park, where he can be anywhere in the Highlands within just a couple hours. Whether mountain biking, sea kayaking, or heading to the hills on a trip, for Mark, every day is different. He has a contagious liveliness and is not only a very experienced and knowledgeable guide, but also a fun and dynamic companion on the trail. So welcome, Mark.
Hi, Michelle, and thank you for your kind words. Yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing this fantastic trips again with our guests this season. And it's great to have the chance to talk to everyone today and to look at the trip in a little more detail.
Okay, so before we delve into the trip with Mark, I'd like to just give a brief overview of what sets Boundless Journeys apart. First, we keep our group small with never more than 16 guests, and a few trips like this one, we limit it to as few as 8 guests, which allows us to tread lightly and have more intimate meals and experiences. We make the planning easy. I specialize in Scotland and can answer your questions to help you get the most out of your trip, and even suggestions on how to spend a day or two in Edinburgh. And our guides are incredibly experienced and enthusiastic about their country. Because they live locally, they know the region and the trails inside out. Mark is a prime example. And as you'll see, we choose charming and authentic boutique hotels with excellent personalized service, where you really get a true feeling of the culture and warm hospitality of the area. And last but not least, you can travel with other adventurous guests on our group tours or plan a private trip, just for you and your travel companions. So Scotland is safe and easy to get to. Inverness has a small airport, or you can fly into Edinburgh and enjoy a beautiful train ride up north. And with our knowledgeable and friendly guides like Mark, you'll learn so much about the culture, the flora, and fauna of the area. And Scottish cuisine is creative and fresh, from picnics on the trail to diverse seafood and dishes in the evenings. Each day brings spectacular views of dramatic cliffs, sprawling inland landscapes, impressive mountains, and of course the ocean. And our small group allows authentic, immersive experiences, and our guide takes care of everything while you can be in the moment on the trail. Now I'll let Mark take us through the trip. Mark, thanks for taking the time to join us from Scotland, and we certainly appreciate having your expertise today.
Okay, hi everyone, and thanks for the overview, Michelle. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about the trip today. I suppose just a bit about me first. So I'm based up here in the heart of the Highlands in the Cairngorms National Park. So I'm about a 3-hour drive to the north of Edinburgh. And I'm really lucky to have the chance to work all over Scotland. These days, I choose to split my summer season up mostly through hiking and sea kayaking. And most of my time is spent either on the far north or the west coast of Scotland and out on the islands of the country. The view you see there, that's Eilean Donan Castle. It's been fortified since the 13th century. Beautiful castle, that. Named after a 6th century Irish saint, Bishop Donan, who was travelling up the west coast spreading Christianity. Eilean is Gaelic for island, so hence the name Eilean Donan. And we get a chance to visit that castle on day 6 of the trip. So for me, the Highlands is a really special part of the world, and definitely somewhere that you can be really content to be able to both work and play, as I'm lucky enough to be able to do. And hiking here, I think, is the perfect way to see the landscape. It's a chance to slow things down, definitely get away from it, and that works really well on these trips. And there's definitely a depth of history to the landscape up here that you actually need to take that a little bit more time to reveal. And that's what I think we can do and set out to do on this trip for everybody. Lovely shot of a nice Highland coo there, ever present in the landscape. No doubt about seeing those on your journey through the Highlands with us. And on the right there, that sea stack in the distance, that's up on the Orkney Islands to the north, which is the first half of the trip. That's the Old Man of Hoy, just short of 500 foot, that old red sandstone pillar. Changed massively in the last 100 years, probably won't be with us for that much longer, but a great coastal hike out there to see it. So I've lived in Scotland for the last 25 years, as Michelle said. Born in the north of England, moved north, and I'm not going anywhere else. It's the only place to be. There's a lifetime's worth of exploring up here, and yeah, it's a privilege to run trips for people, and just to get the pace right and allow us all to engage, not just with the scenery, but with the people here, and that's what we'll get on with. There's a huge variety in the landscape, and it's going to make every day of a trip really quite different and special. You can see there the pictures. Top slide there has got the Ring of Brodgar, 2,500 BC. So that stone circle was built the same time as the earliest pyramids in Egypt. It's a 100-meter wide circle. They put up 60 of those megaliths to begin with, and 27 of them remain, been there for the last 5,000 years, encircled by a stone-cut ditch. And without causing any damage, look how close the folk are. You know, we can really get in touch with our history up on the Orkneys and up in Scotland, and this trip's a great opportunity to do that. The bottom picture there is Skara Brae, down at a place called the Bay of Skye on Orkney. It's a Neolithic village, and it's the best preserved Neolithic village in Northern Europe. Beautiful site to visit, and we'll visit that when we're out on the trip. But it's not just about history, it's very definitely about getting into the landscape, and you can see Lone Walker there. You can be a lone walker or you can be with a whole group. It's a big landscape, and we're going to spend our time hiking some beautiful trails. That's up on the Isle of Hoy, walking out to the Old Man of Hoy that we've already seen a picture of. So in terms of the trip itself then, a little bit of an idea of how the towns and the areas complement each other. We've got two very distinct areas. In the first half of the trip, we spend our time up on the Orkney Islands, and in the second half of the trip, we move down the country to the Western Highlands and the Central Highlands. So geographically, those areas, as the crow flies, only really about 150 miles apart, but they've got totally their own identity. They're fantastic areas, but they really are completely different in their feel. The Orkney Islands up to the north, made up of 70 odd islands and skerries, really famed for the historical sites that we've talked about, the Neolithic sites, the New Stone Age sites, right through to its Norse and its Viking heritage, and also right up until World War I and World War II, a hugely important island for the war effort. The Orkneys are separated from the Scottish mainland by the Pentland Firth, which experiences some of the fastest tidal flows in the world. And that really fast, rich moving water is a really healthy ecosystem. So lots of opportunity to see things like seals, dolphin and porpoise while we're taking the short ferry hop across to the Orkney Islands. And the islands were actually under Norse rule for 250 years longer than the rest of the west coast of Scotland. So right up to the 1500s, the Orkneys remained under that sort of Norwegian control. The islands themselves, fairly temperate actually, in Scottish terms that is. It's the influence of the ocean really that helps with that, and they're a mecca for migratory birds and a stronghold of some of our rarest birds of prey. So lots of wildlife to see, and that maritime climate has influenced the agriculture as well over the centuries. Great grazing for cattle and sheep and livestock, and that's actually helped to produce the wealth and the rich history that the island's got right now. So hiking up on the Orkneys is mostly on coastal paths and trails, and that lets us really maximise some great views of the ocean and dramatic sea cliffs. The Orkneys has got huge seabird colonies and a very unique flora and fauna. Walking distances range from anywhere from 2 to 6 miles each day, with up to about 700 foot of elevation gain. So that's the north, the Orkney Islands. On day 4 of our trip, we take a short transfer down and head across to the West Highlands, and then the landscape really changes quite dramatically. And we're based in a small highland village, which is the village of Plockton, and that's set on the waterfront on the west coast of Scotland. And for centuries, boats were the main form of transport because we had higher mountain ground in between, and that's why a lot of these villages are laid out in a format where all the houses are really very close to that shoreline. Real feeling and sense of remoteness to Plockton. It's ringed with hills and mountains, wooded lower slopes and clear mountain tops. We mostly walk on lower trails in the Highland glens, and we'll take the opportunity every now and then to head up to some of the lower summits on the mountains to get some great views of the glens beneath us. So in terms of distance, we'd look to range from between 4 to 9 miles. On the days when the walks are shorter, we'd perhaps look to complete up to 1,300 foot of elevation gain, and perhaps a little less if we're walking further. So during our trip, we'll initially meet up in Inverness. We head north onto the Orkneys for our first 3 nights and stop in the Sands Hotel, just to the south of the main town, Kirkwall. We then transfer down to Plockton for the 4th and 5th nights and visit Skye while we're in the area. And then we do a really short transfer to the Central Highlands across to the town of Fort Augustus. And that's just at the southwest end of Loch Ness, world famous area, obviously. And that is a great location to visit Highland glens and castles. In terms of the trail conditions and what to expect when you're out with us, well, I'd say overall Scottish trails are a little more natural. They can be rocky and they can sometimes be a bit more challenging. And I think the main thing that makes the difference for us is the weather, and it really changes the walking conditions and perhaps the challenge underfoot. If you look at the pictures there, we've got a real contrast, and those are both trails. The one on the left is on Skye in the Coolin Mountains, and that quite rocky trail obviously can offer challenge, but it's quite a short walk, and we've got all the time to make sure everyone's very happy with the ground there. And then we've got great conditions on the right there, and we'll certainly see some well-surfaced trails during the trip. But we very definitely have 4 seasons in a day at certain times, but the bottom line is the guides are really used to dealing with that, and we're just going to tailor the walks to both the conditions of the day and the hikers' abilities, and really people shouldn't be too concerned. Michelle?
Sure, thanks, Mark. So our Scotland trip is rated a 3 or moderate on a scale of up to 5. Our moderate trips are designed to be enjoyed by all regular hikers, yet Scotland's more rugged terrain does require a bit more agility and stable footing. We hike at a leisurely pace, about 2 to 5 hours or 3 to 6 miles a day, with some longer options offered if your group seeks a bit more of a challenge. And the hikes are a mixture of coastal and lakeside paths, which vary from grassy fields to rocky paths and some dirt trails in the mountains as well. So if you exercise regularly and have experience hiking and are comfortable on uneven terrain and can also walk comfortably 5 to 6 miles, then you should be well prepared for this trip.
So for us, a typical day's schedule, most mornings at the hotels, breakfast is normally taken between 8 and 9 in the morning. And during that time, we'll take the opportunity to have a quick review of the day's plan. We'll have looked at the maps the night before. You'll already know where you're heading to, but we'll just check we've got the gear ready for the day, and then a short transfer through to trailhead. We use our own vehicle, which stays with us throughout the trip, so we can always leave any kit we need in the van. And generally, we look to complete our trail walks in the morning and perhaps into the early afternoon. Some great shots there. The top picture is the northern end of Skye, lovely view of the islands in the distance. And then the view to the south there is on the boat, the Bella Jane, out to a walk in the Coolin Mountains. We do a short boat transfer out to a really dramatic walk in the Coolin Hills. So the type of walking that we're going to do, it's mostly driven really to be inclusive, I would say. And the main aim there is to keep the pace comfortable to suit all group members, and that makes it achievable for everyone, and most of all adapting it to the weather conditions. We're going to take regular stops for photographs. We're going to have snacks and drinks with us, and we're going to carry a small rucksack out on the trail, and it's often great to have lunch with a view, so that's something we can look forward to. Generally, we then move on and visit either a castle or an archaeological site, maybe a distillery in the afternoon. And the aim most days is to try and get folk back to the hotel for about 4 p.m. If some people want to head back to the hotel, that's grand. But if people want to do additional hikes or visits, then most days we can arrange that, and we can make it work for everybody. Usually looking to have dinner around about 7 p.m. in the evening, with a meet-up at about 6:30 to chat about the day, maybe exchange some photographs, but also just to talk about the next day's plan, so everybody knows and is prepared and has had a look at the map and we know what's coming. So the picture there, beautiful shot of low light on the Trotnish Peninsula on northern Skye. So Obviously, any trip to Scotland is designed to get us to really different landscapes, and one of the things we're best known for is our iconic mountains, and that's the Coolin Ridge on Skye there, and a beautiful panorama. So the Black Coolins on Skye, a eroded heart of a volcano. The rocks are actually relatively young in geological terms, about 70 odd million years old. But the gabbro, a really hard, resistant rock, it makes for a really challenging mountaineering experience. But we're going to take a trail around the base of those mountains and just look to get close to it. Next shot shows a walk up on higher ground, but that sort of softer terrain of grass and heather with some great views down into the glens. As well as the mountains, we're obviously very close to water a lot of the time, and the water's really what's shaped our landscape. Shot there is at the Atlantic, on the Orkney Islands, nothing to the northwest of there until you reach Greenland, and then I guess the eastern seaboard of North America, just looking out west. It's a beautiful place. And that's a walk on day 2 of our trip. Once we get down into the Central Highlands, a little bit different. The inland waterways are the Highland lochs that you people want to see. The shot we get in there is a great view looking up Loch Ness, which is 23 miles of open waterway. There's more water in Loch Ness than all of the lakes and rivers in England combined. It is a huge, huge loch. So I say a gentler landscape, but amazing to see nonetheless. Castles and historical sites have already featured in the chat, and there's Eilean Donan Castle again, and that wee chapel on the bottom right hand corner. Beautiful visit there. It's the Italian chapel. And it was built by Italian prisoners of war in the Second World War up on the Isle of Orkney. They needed something, a place of worship, and they were given the materials to build this absolutely unique chapel. And that's only about 4 miles away from our accommodation while we're on Orkney, and we'll always take the opportunity to visit that on the trip. So a couple more views there of some spots we should see. On the left-hand side, we've got Urquhart Castle, which is a clan grant castle. It was active for 500 years, Jacobite castle, raided by the Lords of the Isles from the east, and ultimately blown up by its own owners, as it were, to stop it being raided and taken by the sort of raiding parties. The view to the top is Skara Brae, that Neolithic village. You actually get a great view there of the dressers and the furniture inside it. That Neolithic site, it's unique because the furniture in the buildings was all built from the stone that splits so easily. So unlike many areas where you have a new Stone Age village, the wooden interiors would have broken down over the thousands of years. The interiors of this Neolithic village are in absolutely pristine condition, which is why it's such a world-famous site. And the lower shot there is just some great standing stones up on the Orkney Isles. So there we go. Down to the beasts, we've obviously got a real range of flora and fauna to get used to, but ever-present sheep. Plenty of species of sheep, and they're out on the hill, they're in the fields, they're pretty hard to escape from. Great shot of a puffin there, plenty of puffins up on the Orkney Islands to see. And of course, we've always got eagles. We have 2 types of eagle. We've got the golden eagle, which is very much a bird of the high mountain. And we've got the white-tailed eagle, which is a sea eagle, a little bit like the bald eagle, which we'll see on lower ground and in wooded areas, actually. And final shot there of that Highland coo. Looks quite close to that Boundless Journeys van, doesn't it, really? I think I took that shot last year. That's a great image of a sort of really typical beast of burden, as it were, out on the ground here. So in terms of what we want to expect and pack for, then Scotland, I have to say, probably does have a bit of a reputation for its weather, but it works both ways. Sunscreen does come out. I'm sorry to say, there's no surprise there. Definitely need your sunscreen in the bag, but we also need our waterproofs, and it's really just about preparation. I mean, most of the time when I start my day, I'm always going to dress in a lightweight long sleeve top and long hiking trousers. The rest of the kit that you carry is going to let you tailor to the day, and a waterproof jacket and waterproof rain pants is really important to carry in the bag, and some thin, warm layers of clothing rather than one bulky fleece is really handy to have in the bag. I think I always would recommend that people carry a thin hat and gloves as well. Just if the wind gets up and takes the heat away, it's great to have that available. And as you see in the picture there on the left, maybe a walking pole for the days when you just want that extra little bit of support. In terms of footwear, I think it's best to consider obviously boots or shoes, but they've got to be waterproof regardless. We're going to see some showers in most weeks in Scotland. But for me, boots over low-cut shoes every time. It's really going to help out on the more rugged terrain, and it's just going to keep you feeling secure and stable, and that's really important. So that's what we need to pack for. If we think about the accommodations on the trip, then we've got 3 different hotels that we use. The shot there is at the Sands Hotel, which is up on Orkney. That's the place we'll stay for the first 3 nights. The building dates from the 1860s. It was originally built as a herring store, actually. They used to dry and salt the herring and then pop it into barrels and export it from the islands. It's said that entire building cost £150 to build, which is amazing to me now. And the photograph there is taken from the pier, which is a working pier. There's the odd small fishing boat that still comes in and lands fresh lobster or crab. So you can see it really is right on the waterfront in a small village in Burray. So really great place to stay. Lovely hotel on the West Highlands, the Plockton Inn, one of my personal favourites, I have to say. That could be something to do with the seafood platter, and it is renowned for its seafood restaurant. They've got their own smokery on the premises, and they serve local real ales. Do I need to say anything else? Well, perhaps I should, but it's just a really great small family-run hotel, as is the Sands, by the way. These are small hotels which have a family feel, where we can meet people and chat. And the final of the hotels that we stop in, slightly larger than the other 2, is the Lovat. First used as a hotel in the 1860s, served one of the Victorian railways that ran down the Great Glen, and that's close to the southwest end of Loch Ness, as I've mentioned before. Family-run hotel, boutique style, some really nice reception rooms downstairs, open fires, and some lovely comfy places just to lounge and look out of the windows at the great view of the mountains around you. Food obviously features quite highly in our trips. Lots of homemade and local produce used in it, so great beef, lamb, and particularly seafood. I think we have some amazing seafood up here, and we've got some of the freshest seafood in the world. It's being landed on piers in front of us, let's face it. But I don't think anybody's got any concerns if you vegetarian or need a wheat-free, or basically any other dietary needs will all be catered for with any problem at all. But I would say these hotels are great hotels because they're quite small places and they have changing menus with fresh produce. So as long as we know in advance if there's any dietary requirements, they will be catered for, and we'll mention it as we arrive at the places, and there'll be a varied and interesting sort of menu on offer for everybody. And I think no trip to Scotland would be complete, would it really, without a visit to the local distillery, and that's the Skara distillery up on Skye, and we'll definitely be dropping in there. So there we are. Michelle?
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. It's been fantastic reliving the trip and listening to you talk about the Boundless Journeys Scotland experience. I definitely need to find a reason to get back there soon. In closing, I'd like to mention our savings programs. And when you travel with us, you're automatically a member of our Explorers Club, which means that after each trip with Boundless Journeys, you earn travel credit good towards your next trip. It starts at 5% of your previous trip's land costs and increases to 10% when you return from your 3rd trip. Our Friends and Family program allows you to share your love of travel with others and save in the process. If you get 9 others to book with you, you can either join the group for free or share your savings among the group so everyone pays less. As mentioned in the previous slide, solo travelers can save $500 on single supplement for the first 1 or 2 reserved for each scheduled small group departure, if reserved at least 120 days prior to the departure. And finally, when you refer to new travelers that reserve a trip with us, you'll get $100 towards a future trip, and your referral saves $100 on their first trip. Well, this just about wraps up our webinar. I'd like to again thank Mark and remind you that if you have any questions about this trip, please don't hesitate to contact me at the number and email address on the screen. If you've submitted questions using the chat window, I'll respond to you individually by email shortly. And for a full collection of worldwide adventures, please visit us online at boundlessjourneys.com. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to sharing the beautiful Scottish Highlands and Islands with you and hope you can join us.